This now I'm Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons 5th Ed D&D. Well, we last left off, we were talking about wilderness and surviving in it. You know what can happen to you while you're surviving in the wilderness? You could get lost. The fact is, you are going to need one of the people to be a navigator, the person that is traveling with you and basically directing you where you need to go when crossing the wilderness. This will require a wisdom survival check to make sure you stay on track, which the game master, which the DM will call for at an appropriate time. The DC of this survival wisdom check, this wisdom survival check, will depend on the type of terrain that you're traveling within. Certain terrains are easier to travel in than others. If your characters are taking their time with travel, the navigator will have +5 to this check. If you're hurrying along, you will have -5 to this check. If you have some kind of reference point, like you can see the sun or the stars very easily, you will have advantage on this check. Now, if you make this check, you're fine. You're navigating correctly in the right direction that you want to go on. You're going where you want to. You're at least traveling, generally speaking, where you're aiming to travel. If you fail it, you've basically lost track of where you're going. And then you roll a d6, and you effectively lose a d6 hours wandering in the wrong direction, after which the navigator could attempt again once to figure out where they are and get your characters back on track. But it's pretty much every time you fail, you lose a number of hours, and you could keep failing and keep losing hours and possibly get more and more and more and more lost. Now let's move on and talk about another type of environment. Urban. Cities, towns, villages are great backdrops for places that you can adventure within. Things can always occur there. Entire quest lines, adventures could occur within a single village. That means you never have to leave it for everything that's going on to occur there. Now, this means you're going to have to populate this village with all kinds of buildings, places, peoples, all these kind of things. When you are building a village, it is very important to note that you shouldn't concentrate on creating every building, populating it with every person that should be there. Doing this is madness. You don't need to know everything about this village. What's important is to look to the important information, the important locations, landmarks, things like that your players may interact with. If you have a specific mission or quest in line that your players are arriving in this town for, plan out buildings or people that they're going to meet in respect to that mission. Don't go overboard with everything else. If they are deciding to come up with something else, then you might have to worry about having either some backups or using the book, which we'll be talking about in a minute. So if you do need a quick settlement, the book does provide some information on basic charts that you can roll on that will give you some quick ideas for a very quick and dirty settlement you can throw together that, hey, you've already got it set up, you've got it ready, you don't have to worry too much about it. There isn't a huge amount of details. Of course, you can, like I've talked about all these charts, use them for inspiration or choose things on your own. But sometimes rolling, especially in this case, can give a little bit of character and force you to make some interesting decisions about a town. That's why for these, it's a little better just to roll it really quickly and figure something out. But if you're planning out ahead, maybe then you can reference it. Now, this is assuming you know the size of the settlement that you're going to be using, village, town, city, and the basic government they're going to have. You will make these basic decisions, and then you will use these charts to build it. So now, I'm exploring this random village I have. Buildings. Maybe I want to have some kind of random building that my players are going to, or something that they're going to encounter that's important to it. There are charts for random buildings. They're divided up into the various types of buildings you could have, and then you go into like subgroups of charts that will help you determine more information about that subtype of building, whether tavern, religious center, or something else. You do have some choices here, because if you get a building that makes no sense in the village that you've already kind of rolled out and are building, or if you have a village you've already kind of designed ahead of time and you need a sudden building and you're using this, and it doesn't make sense, you could re-roll, you could choose something else, you could ignore an option. But sometimes it's fun to take one of these options and then come up with a storyline as to why this is here. Why is this building here? This doesn't make any sense. This is really weird. Unusual. It's become memorable. Now let's talk about mapping out your settlements, your villages, your towns, your cities. The fact is, when you're doing this, try to lessen the details that you're adding to the map. There are certain things you want to do, but you don't need to put on every building on the map. What you want to do is you want to put on important landmarks, perhaps certain key buildings, and then after that you will need major thoroughfares. You don't need to name every road, you don't need to come up with information about every building, at least its location. You just want to be very general about the information you're providing. Something like a village, you're going to need the sort of town center where all the major roads come into. These are all the roads that all the farmlands in the nearby area are bringing their goods into the center of this village and perhaps trading with. So town center is going to be the most important part of this entire village that you're going to be basically noting. After that, it sort of builds out very easily to what you need from the map. When you get into things like towns and cities, you will need city walls. You'll want a couple major thoroughfares. Again, don't aim for every road, and you're not going to name every road because then we're going crazy. If you go to the city level, you're probably going to want some inner walls. And then at that point in time, make districts. You're going to name these districts after some kind of landmark, perhaps what kind of population it has there, or what kind of trade goes on in that area. So you're basically building out some information on this map with a very couple easy steps that make it very simple, but give you enough information when developing it. Now, you can encounter stuff in a settlement. They might seem safe, like bastions of safety, but there are always dark forces at work. There might be creatures lurking in the sewer, people of ill repute hiding in plain sight. You could easily get into a battle in a back alley, or a marketplace could suddenly erupt into a fight. You could also get yourself in trouble with the authorities and they could be after you. So you can see there are a lot of ways to have encounters, battles or otherwise, within a urban setting. These should be definitely made to be very interesting because they already have an interesting backdrop and can help to flush out your urban settings. It is very important to note that usually as long as your players are not looking for trouble and not trying to work on the authorities, generally speaking, they will get the best benefit out of a settlement, and most of the time, probably not get into an encounter. But sometimes, trouble comes to you. But that's it for today. I dove into the rest of the information I want to talk about wilderness with survival. Just wanted to go over some survival. Basic information about what it means to find your way when you're lost. Simple as that. I'm not getting lost. I'm not getting lost. Then we dove into settlements, which I talked a lot about information about settlements. I talked about creating them randomly, but also being inspired by this information, putting buildings together to keep it as simple as you need it. Don't go too far in your design of these settlements. Allow them to evolve naturally. Come up with some basic information, and as you are inspired by this basic information, either from the chart or what you personally develop, inspired by the kind of ideas from the chart, you will build it out. The same with buildings. You will come up with these random buildings, which, again, if they don't make sense, you could leave them out, or you could add a little interest to your game and put them in. Why is there a mansion out here in this tiny village? Good question! Come up with a reason behind it. There are really great stories that can be told by doing this. I did, of course, talk about a little bit urban encounters. Encounters in these settlements that you're going to be fighting. Which will lead us into next week, where we're going to dive deeper into urban encounters and more about settlements, and hopefully keep going with building your environments that you're going to be playing in. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Just for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.